I just did a video on when did Christianity destroy the teachings of Jesus, and that was something that was very early on. I tried to keep that video pretty short, and yeah, Christians that worship Jesus, you're not following what he's teaching, okay? So if you follow what Jesus teaches, you won't be a Christian. You're going to be something that's better, honestly. I know you don't understand that, but that's the way it is. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. What I wanted to do was respond to somebody. It was kind of a little off from what I was doing, but there was something presented in the comment about talking to AI and getting answers about circumcision that I want to jump into. I've worked with AI a little bit before, and AI is deficit when it comes to what I'm doing here. AI cannot free think, and AI cannot interpret. AI can gather information and tell you what, from all over the place, here's what the general overall concept is. But if I was to say something like, AI, here's a story, a fable, tortoise and the hare, with the ending up with slow and steady that wins the race. Would you come up with an alternative ending or a different moral for the story for that? It won't be able to do that. It wouldn't be able to come up and say, oh, well, instead of slow and steady wins the race, how about when you're almost finished, don't quit? It can't do that. If you asked it about the story of Jesus and the fig tree and say, come up with an alternative. Jesus had the power, was hungry and had the power to kill that tree. What should he have done instead? It won't be able to say to you, he should have had the tree become heavily laden with figs. It's stuck inside of a program. It cannot work outside, and it cannot free think. I'm free thinking. It cannot. I can't use AI for interpretation. It's shallow. And of course, AI is growing, so that may not always be the case. But, as you're going through interpretations and you're coming, Taoism, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. You have to manipulate that to make it your own. The Tao that can be told. What's the Tao? The Tao is the way. Told. Talking, okay, I tell you, talk about it. Is not the eternal one. Does that mean we can't talk about it? It's so secret you can't talk about it? Wow, that's just bizarre. You're done. AI can't get past that. There's a way to understand it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. What is the eternal Tao? What's different from told? Manipulate told. The Tao that is experienced is the eternal Tao. AI can never do that. We have to. Well, I shouldn't say never, but at this point, it doesn't look like it. I mean, that would take something more than programming. There would have to be some sort of free-thinking network out there that is not in place. It is not in place. It's a very complex network, but it's not free thinking. Okay. The other thing was the circumcision, because I've done this before, but there's two kinds of circumcision. There's a physical circumcision that we know about, and then there's I'm going to call it a spiritual circumcision with a caveat. We have to change the term spiritual. First of all, let me read this comment. This is where this originated from here, this entire video. Okay, I just realized I was circumcised. This is AI answer, which I believe to be accurate. All right, I'm sure you must not just have realized you were circumcised. The AI answer, which I believe to be accurate. Okay, what we get into here is this. Acts 15. It's got a few in there. In the Jerusalem Council's decision, Paul and Barnabas affirm that Gentile believers are not required to keep the full Mosaic law. Instead, they are instructed to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood and the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual immorality, four specific requirements that reflect core moral principles found in the law but are not binding on Gentiles as part of the covenantal system. Okay, one thing I do have to say that there's an issue. I have a problem with what you did here is that you didn't tell me what answer or what question you asked AI. So this is it. This is what it gave you as answers, but I don't know what question you asked it, how it motivated it to come here. Paul warns that if Gentiles submit to circumcision, they become obligated to keep the entire law, implying that without circumcision, they are not under the Mosaic law's demands. Okay, it goes through a few things here talking about circumcision and stuff, which again, I was talking about, as I was reading through where the separation happened, where this idea that this guru Jesus has something called the Sermon on the Plain. But you know what? Instead of following those, instead of working through and understanding what each one of those instructions means to you spiritually, once you enter the narrow gate with it, once you make it your own. Yeah, same as the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. You've got to make it your own. You've got to enter the narrow gate. It's the same concept that we're going to have there. So as we're getting into what AI is doing, AI is talking to me like I'm sitting in Sunday school. And it's not interpreting anything. It's telling me the same thing that the preacher would tell me or something like that. There's a teaching in here that there are many roads looking outward that lead to destruction. That is everybody that is looking at the material and not interpreting it, and they're worshiping it. They're doing it. I'm circumcised too. I was raised in a home that was like automatic. It's automatic. Paul, however, teaches. You know what? This is what I want to do here. We need to look at what Paul is teaching, but we also need to understand something before we do that. There are two circumcisions. If you don't understand the deeper layer, you're only going to understand the first layer. And if you understand the first layer, you're going to lose the foreskin of your penis. That's the physical. Here you do. This is God's chosen people. Cut the skin off your penis, the foreskin off your penis. That was a God's law. That started back in, that was in Genesis somewhere with respect to Abraham. Yeah, it was early on that you must get circumcised. Anyway, all right. So the teaching was that. But if you interpret it, you're going to understand that there's something spiritual and that the terms are analogous, that there's a spiritual circumcision, which is not a physical circumcision. That means you've taken the verse and you've turned around and made it your own, but you realize, okay, circumcision spiritually does not mean cutting the skin off your penis, the foreskin off your penis. It means something different. Like this, naked. If I'm in the physical world and I'm naked, that means I'm standing there without any clothes on. In the spiritual realm, if I'm naked, what that means is I'm covered with nothing. I have no shame. You can know anything about me. I got nothing to hide. I'm in good shape. I feel good. Yeah, I got nothing to hide. That's spiritually naked. So the term naked is analogous. It takes on a different meaning. We're going to run into the same thing when it's circumcision. You can't cut it's if you're not interpreting it, you know what it is. Yep, snip, snip. If you do interpret it, what you understand is that we are mental products of our unjudged life, or our judged life experience, unresolved judged life experiences, and that a spiritual circumcision is to resolve those things. I have hate. I have shame. This happened to me in my childhood, and every time it comes up, we're living through those, through cause and effect. Circumcision means going and cutting that off. This is something that happened as a result of a union between two things. It was it was an experience, an altercation. Something happened somehow in life that created a mental judgment up here, left in place, that now I'm living through as if I'm remembering that valley has lions in it that eats my children or something. We're hanging on to things we have to let go of. We're living through fears and shame and pain, and they've been doing this for a long time, and that's what the circumcision in the spiritual world is. Forgiveness. Removing the mote from your eye. Forgiving the odd against your brother. Becoming poor in spirit. Every one of those is the same thing. Take this mass of memories, resolve it. That's what we're living through. Let's go see what Paul says. Actually, this is where circumcision begins in the tradition. Chapter 17, this is when God reappears, and there's the calling of Abram, and Abram becomes Abraham. So this is the very beginning, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This represents a human life cycle. This is your early life, Abram and Sarai. This is before you're aware. When we get down to here, the way these work is that this is the point where you yourself have said, oh my God, I've got to turn inward. My life is my experience. That's the calling right there. You're going to reconnect with your higher awareness. That's God comes back at that time. And then keeping the covenant, you shall be uncircumcised. What we've got here is a healing going on, and the circumcision is physical, isn't it? For the people that aren't going to understand anything, they're living a very different life, a very difficult life, and they need something very strong and very important. This is thousands of years ago. They're doing this. This is how they're living and believing. If you understood it spiritually, you would know what it means is that you're cutting off the flesh of your foreskin. What you're doing is you are forgiving the judgments that you have made through union with other life experiences. That is a very complicated way of saying forgiveness. Let it go. Readdress these things and separate yourself from these things that are hurting you. So that's what the covenant is spiritually. Move on in life and don't judge things. Judge not. lest you be judged, for the judgment with which you judge others will be judged likewise unto you. That's what this is doing in a very different way. Stay circumcised. Don't gather things. Don't judge things. Let me show some examples. This one is in the Gospel of Thomas, as a Jesus saying it would not appear in language like this in the Gospels in the Bible because it's just too plain language. It kind of tells you what to do. His disciples said to him, "Is circumcision beneficial or not?" He said to them, if it were beneficial, their father would beget them already circumcised from their mother. Rather, the circumcision is in spirit has become completely profitable. All right, what does this say? They're asking him, is it beneficial to get circumcised? And he says, you know what? If it was beneficial, they would have been born that way. Why would you have to have a baby born and then cut something off of it anyway? Yeah, it's a mutilation thing. Rather, circumcision in spirit. There you go. Healing has become completely profitable. That's what you want to do. Circumcision in spirit does not mean cutting off something physically. It means cutting off something in the mind. Let's put a real direct face to that. That's called forgiveness. But what is that actually for it to truly work, for it to truly be effective? It isn't about the other person, the perpetrator or the victim or anything like that. It's about the memory. And when you draw it up, how do you feel about it? It's the perception that you have with the memory that causes the emotional state that is continuing to play out in that same emotional state. It doesn't mean the same thing is going to happen. It means the same things are going to happen that cause you to feel that same emotion. It could be something, that's a little bit different here or there or involving other people, but it's still being driven by that feeling inside of you that's unresolved. It's going to trigger. It's like a memory that comes up. And that is very specifically the judgment with which you judge others will be likewise judged to you, meted to you. Karma. Cause and effect. The same thing is going, oh, smell that apple pie. God, that reminds me of childhood. It's the same thing. You just got triggered. But triggered one way is okay. Triggered bad way is not. So we're looking at that right there. We're looking at a judgment, a memory of an event that happened in the way that we are judging it still today. You can't change the event. You have to somehow find a way to change the way it's judged, to separate oneself, to rise above, to somehow become something different so that you're no longer mentally experiencing the emotion when you bring up that memory. It should be like, yeah, no big deal. If you bring it up and it's not okay, that's the problem right there. That's what this actually means right here. Circumcision is that, changing the perception of a memory so that it no longer hurts you. But then what is spirit? What are you doing when you're healing spirit? What are you doing when you're becoming poor in spirit? What is spirit? By default, spirit would be, we can go to Buddha and right off the bat he tells us in plain language, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It's founded on our thoughts. It's based on our thoughts. That's the first verse of the Dhammapada, his pivotal teaching. So he tells you right up front, we're a product of our mental judgments in life. But we also know that we're born already with certain brain types and, certain things in our DNA, certain propensities, certain likes and, whatnot, introverted, extroverted. We're born, we have different personalities when we're born. And that's going to be a part of us. But beyond that, and we have no control over that, but beyond that, what happens is we become products of our judged life experiences and the manner in which we continue to hold them. And then we don't flow free in life. We continue to experience turmoil within the framework of that early judgment that continues to roll along unless we see what's going on, begin a mental separation process, a forgiveness process, a way that when we look at those memories, we go, you know what? I'm lucky to be here. What the hell? I was just going through life. I was born where I was born. I came through what I came through. I need to get past this. Somehow we have to do that, feel better about ourselves. Somehow we've got to get into a better flow, but it's this funk stuff in our head that keeps us from there if we don't address it. And the more you just ignore it, the worse it gets over time. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. But not many people are going to turn inward and heal it. But if not, it's written in such a way that people will carry it. People will nevertheless carry it, and it will carry them. They never enter the narrow gate with it. They don't know that they are the blind leading the blind. The many standing outside the narrow gate. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I jumped over to Romans here. What does Paul say about it? I'm going to use the NRSVU just for the language. And I'm going to come down into chapter 2, the righteous judgment of God. I'm going to come right down to a place down here specifically that I've got marked out from previous work. 7, to those who by patiently doing good seek for glory and honor and immortality, he will give eternal life. That's on 7. That's going to be a pattern. 8, while those who are self-seeking and who obey not the truth, but injustice, there will be wrath and fury. That's on 8. That would coincide with first sin, wouldn't it? There's a pattern that's deeper than what we see. All right, so as I get down here, what I'm going to come down to is right where it starts talking about circumcision. But let's see what's going on. I'm going to back up a little bit. It's called this section is called the Jews and the Law. But if you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law and boast of your relation to God, okay, we have to know a couple of things here. The Jew, of course, we know who the Jew is. They're coming from the Jewish. What is the law? The law is actually, if you interpret it, the law is the comprehension of the interpretation. I can tell you this, if you do find the interpretation accurately, and somebody that was a Hindu found their interpretation accurately, and someone who was a Buddhist, Taoist, in any place around the world using the same template in different mythologies or religious genres find the internal path in their material, they would find that they are all on that inner path. They're all teaching the same thing. When you see the universality there, you found the path. If you think you're doing the right thing and everybody else is following the wrong religion, you haven't cracked the code yet. If you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law and boast of your relation to God and know his will and determine what really matters because you are instructed in the law, and if you are sure that you are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, a corrector of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth. Let me rephrase what I just said a little bit ago. I want you to understand the implication of it. If you're following the material and believing in the material and saying we're the Jews or we're the Christians or we're whatever and we are the chosen ones, you don't have the law. If you are a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, and you get together and you all understand this path, you would all understand that it is one unified path, and that would be the law. Do the Jews keep that law? Or do they war against other people? You then, who teach others, will you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who forbid adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by your transgressions of the law? For as it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. What does that sound like? Screw your God. Okay, we got a frame of things going on here, or a flow of things going on, talking about the people who are hypocritical. Call yourselves Jews and upholders of the law, but you don't do the things that are in the law. What are the law? It's the understanding and the comprehension of the material. They're not in keeping it. All right, let's look at this now. We step into the circumcision. Circumcision is indeed of value if you obey the law, but if you're a transgressor of the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. Okay, stop right there. Physically, it's not possible. Circumcision is indeed of value if you obey the law. Cutting off the skin of your penis is of value if you obey the law, but if you don't obey the law, then the cut off skin of your foreskin will grow back. Yeah, that's not going to work. You have to look at this and go, what the heck is he saying there? So this can only be in the mind. Circumcision indeed is of value if you obey the law. Forgiveness and purity is good if you follow the interpretation of the material. But if you don't follow the interpretation of the material, then your purity is no longer pure. Yeah, that's how it works. You're no longer that, yay, everything's okay. You go back to the turmoil. So if uncircumcised keep the requirements of the law, will not their uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? These get so weird, you're like, okay, I don't even know what to do. People just blast over this. You have to understand their analogous terms. They're spiritual. Uncircumcised means judged memories, unresolved judged memories. And, and circumcised means that you're pure of that, free. Circumcised, nirvana. Uncircumcised, full in spirit. Circumcised, poor in spirit. These are going to all work the same way. So, the uncircumcised keep the requirement of the law, will not their uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? So if you don't have the skin of your penis cut off, but you do the right thing, aren't you still regarded as a good person, a person of the belief? This isn't about, if you want it to, it could be about saying, I can believe in Jesus, and I don't have to have my foreskin cut off. Yeah, that's exactly fine. But in this case, when you interpret it, it's telling you that if you are circumcised, but you keep the law, it doesn't matter. You still get the benefits, the rewards. Reason this through. What Paul is saying is that circumcision, that physical circumcision of the foreskin of your penis, is absolutely not important. Has nothing to do with salvation. Not a damn thing to do with salvation. It's the circumcision of spirit, the forgiveness within that you must have. Everybody's going to teach you that in ways that are so obscure. Wow, it'll guide a population at the same time. It's artfully done. Then the physically uncircumcised person who keeps the law will judge you, though having the written code, circumcision, or a transgressor of the law. So that means people that don't uphold the law are going to judge you who keep the law. For a person is not a Jew who is outwardly, nor is circumcision something external and physical. All right, so a Jew, in this case, you can talk about people, but in this case, it's the follower of the material. If I'm following the material, I can call myself a Jew as long as I am interpreting the material. But that would be like calling myself a Buddhist or a Taoist. The weird thing is, in Judaism, if you don't interpret it, you're looking outward. That means looking out to a God in space, not the God that is your higher awareness. So whoever the person is on this path is, when you understand it, you're at a level that you're no longer in conflict with any other human on the planet. When you all find that path, you find it's one path. And what is it? It's your own spiritual path. But what is spiritual as we look at this continuously, as we're interacting with it? Memories, developed memories, resolution of things that are hurt, that are unresolved, and things like that. It's all mental. We're resolving mental things, and as we resolve mental things, it resolves the way that we feel. We feel very good, and that feels very spiritually uplifting. When it's actually a change in the way that our central nervous system is radiating the brain state. When your brain is happy, you're going to feel good. And when something in the environment might be sneaking up on you, if you're sensitive enough, you can kind of sense that. You might go, what's going on? You have to understand there's got to be some sort of an emotional field that we sense with the central nervous system. But we radiate that and we pick it up from the environment. But to me, that's really when you look at it and you're having these experiences that seem very magical and mystical, I think that's where it's coming from. I think it's a natural process that's coming. If you could imagine, the eyes can see, the nose can smell, the mouth can talk, the ears can, take things in. The central nervous system is the one for the emotional state, and it transmits and receives both. So you sense from the environment, but you also sense your own general brain state. So when you feel good and you feel happy, you're just going to feel good, and you're going to say that's very spiritually uplifting, when in all reality it's a natural process that has to do with our emotional state that drives evolution, honestly. Okay, but you see what's going on there. Even when you look at Paul, you're like, okay, that's not even, he's not talking about he's not talking about circumcision of the penis at all. You cannot. It won't unwrap. He's talking about psychological circumcision. And okay, so that's That's not where I went with that other video. The other video I was doing the separation. Paul is teaching something at a deeper layer too than people understand. All right. And you know what? AI would never do this. AI can't do this. Anyway, I've rambled on enough about this one. I think sometimes it gets over the top for people. It's really deep stuff. It's old stuff, and they had a lot of time. And what? I'm old stuff, and I have a lot of time. So there you go. That's how I can get into it. If you don't have time, it's like, what the heck? That's just weird. If you look at it long enough, you go, okay. You know what they're doing is they're teaching the same thing again and again, but they're shifting up the analogous verbiage and how it's done. You know, I might want to say something like, if you're holding on to something, you can't escape it. You've got to be able to let go of it. You know, you have to forgive something somehow, and that doesn't pass around in the culture. So you create a verse that only certain people will know. You know, an anchored ship will not sail, and people go, okay, I'll pass that around. And, people don't interpret it, go, yeah, duh. People that do go, oh, that's a metaphor for me. If I'm hanging on to my old job, relationship, something like that, dead end, something, I got to get ahead. I'm not getting ahead in life. And somebody else might say an anchored ship cannot sail means that, oh, that's good. You don't want to sail. It's sailing all over the place. You want to be in a port somewhere. You want to anchor. So now you're getting variation in the interpretation because it's outward looking and people make it their own. When in all reality, the ship represents you and holding on to something. You cannot sail free as long as you're holding on to something. That's always going to be the core teaching. And we also have to understand that hanging on is an analogous term still. You sit back and you might look at something and go, I got something that happened to me as a kid that really hurts me, and I'm not hanging on to it. It pisses me off. I'm not hanging on to it, though I hate it. Meanwhile, we don't know we're hanging on to it. By not resolving it, by holding it under its terms and its memory, we're giving it the life that it's going to. It's our judgment that gives it the emotional state that's going to keep it going, and the intensity that we put to it gives it its strength. It increases its amplitude. We have to stop hating it, and we have to step outside of it, and we have to look at somehow we have to heal from it. This video is not about that, but that's what we have to do right there. Letting go of something, or disconnecting or forgiving or whatever, ultimately means taking that memory that you have that is not okay and working it until you go, phew, you know what, I can live with that now. That's where forgiveness truly happens, at that level. That is where circumcision happens, at that level. That's where the ought removed from the I against your brother is, at that level. The forgiveness, I'm blending them up there. Becoming poor in spirit means resolving all of it. Okay, that's how I read it. AI is not going to help us find this type of an interpretation, and also the whole act of cutting the foreskin off the penis, all of that. It's a weird thing the way they do that there, but it's like when in old material, there's this teaching that, if there's some sort of a sexual union, that there's going to be a product as a result, and you can have good offspring or bad offspring. And this is holding the idea that two people can have a experience that is not okay, and as a result, there's a memory that is there that is good or bad. So there's two people that had sex, gay sex, and as a result, a sin results. What it means is two people had a up yours moment, and then they hate each other as a result. So now that wasn't there before, but because they had this exchange that was not okay, as a result, there's a bad offspring that happens. And it's a weird way of teaching that psychological process. In fact, that's how you explain the, Lot giving up his virgin daughters to the men at Sodom. You look at that and go, that didn't happen. What does that story mean? This is all about me. Lot's a part of me. The daughters are a part of my inner self that are, later, they're going to be later iterations. I'm trying to leave something behind. Sodom, this belief system I have, this entire corrupt city, and some help comes in from outside, and the men from the city, the evil men, want to go in and have sex basically with the help. What does that represent right there? You go, God, that's a creepy story. What is that? Well, it represents something metaphorically that it's going to be a struggle. All right, so here we are after chapter 17, the calling happens, all of that. It's time to go destroy Sodom. Right after Noah called, what happens? It's time to destroy the earth. The earth represents your early self. Sodom represents your early self. Noah represents your hero self, and Abraham represents your hero self. Moving on from your early unaware self, Abram and Sarai, they got all the corruption. Now what happens is that we're learning that. So the two angels come in. This represents the idea that we're getting help and understanding from outside now what we're going to have to do. Okay. If you know the Joseph Campbell template, you know where Moses gets his staff, he gets his supernatural aid at the calling. Here we have the calling of Abram, and what these two angels going down there represent is the supernatural aid. But what happens is that the evil men of the city, this represents whatever makes the city evil to begin with, your early self, your early belief systems, your early desires, all of that kind of stuff, want to corrupt. They want to go into, they want to know the men that have come in. What that represents a struggle to move on, a corruption of purity. And Lot offering up his virgin daughters is very weird. Of course, nothing happens as a result, so it doesn't go anywhere. But you would say, why would Lot do that? Well, a real human being did not do that. It's metaphorical. I don't know. It didn't go that way anyway. So we just look at it and go, that's a weird part of the story. But the only way it makes sense is when you realize that the more important part here is that the purity, the help from outside didn't corrupt. We didn't backslide. We didn't go back to the alcohol, the drugs, the relationship, the whatever, the habits. We're moving on. That's what that is representing right there. And the stories represent that. When it's time for Moses to leave Pharaoh, what happens? This is a weird one. God sends plagues to Pharaoh so that Pharaoh goes, okay, get out of here. But then, before he gets a chance to go, God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And Pharaoh says, no, you can't go. Then that repeats like how many times? 8, 9, 10 times, before they finally leave. God is like, it's like holding out here, have this. Nope. Here, go ahead and take it. Nope. Here, go ahead and take it. Nope. You read that story and go, what is God doing? Sending plagues to make him leave, and then go, I'm going to harden your heart, change his mind. Yeah, you're just like yanking Moses' chain there. Okay, that's the struggle to leave the past. That's where the early story, where the men of Sodom wanted to corrupt the outside, was in that point where it's time for the destruction. We got the same thing here. We got Moses and the Israelites. It's time to leave the past behind and leave Pharaoh, but there's that struggle to leave represented right there. Anyway, they're difficult to see motifs. You have to really study them and understand what the template is, and that represents something about my life. That right there represents my struggles to leave my past, the stuff that I was raised with. That it's like I'm not this. I don't want to be this person. I got to leave these things behind. I got to change my beliefs and change my relationships. I have to grow. That's what this represents here. The struggle to leave that behind. All right. Hope this was helpful. See you in the next video.